I'm Melissa McNeil Hammond. Welcome to Making It Great. Today we have a very special show for you. We're going to talk to the League of Women Voters, Miss Ann Primaloff. She has some exciting and great information for you, so stick around and we will be right back after our musical selection. Hi, I'm Melissa McNeil Hammond. Welcome to Making It Great. And today my guest will be the League of Women Voters. We will interview today Miss Ann Primaloff. Thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me.
Great. We're talking about the League of Women Voters. Now, can you first tell us a little bit about what is the League of Women Voters?
The League of Women Voters is a grassroots organization founded by the women who were the leaders of the suffrage movement that brought women the vote in 1920. Since that time, the leaders of that movement created the League to carry out the informed voter mandate that they believed was necessary. They felt that simply getting the vote was not enough.
Yes.
You had to get people to register, to participate in the political process, and to be involved with knowledge as the basis of their action.
Wow, and that so it since it started way back in the suffrage movement, which began, I believe, in the 1800s.
Yes, that's
when
right.
The suffrage movement started, and now we're here in this post-Obama era, and I know people say that racism is dead. Well, what about the women's movement? Isn't that over with? Do we really need a league right now, or do we need to just join forces with other movements?
Well, the league is needed still. First of all, the League of Women Voters since the 70s has allowed men to be members.
Okay, yes.
So it just keeps the name, because if you give up the name or change it, any other group can come in and use it.
Yes.
And the League has now a 95-year history of being trusted as a nonpartisan supporter of all voting rights.
Yes.
Today, its main goal for the next couple of years is protecting the vote.
Yes.
With the Voting Rights Act not really in place anymore for this election, with state laws being directed at restricting the vote, the League still has a role in informing the electorate, being active at the state level, watching the laws that are going into the legislature.
Yes.
A lot of things have to be dealt with. That hasn't ended.
Yes.
And women who are involved in the movement are involved in so many other organizations. While we may have our basic rights today, they always have to be protected.
So some of those voting laws that have passed, I know a lot of African American groups are against like the voter ID because they say it's disenfranchising that, and I think their voice is very loud on the circuit about saying that. So are you saying that those laws are also affecting women voters as well?
Any law that restricts the vote, it affects women, men, people of every race, every age, every economic background. And one of the advantages the League has in its activities is we're organized at the local, the state, and the national level.
Yes.
We are nonpartisan, so we don't care what political party someone is in, what their ideological beliefs are. We are there to protect their rights and to act on government, because we're also concerned that government is not as accountable or transparent in its decision making as it used to be.
Yes.
So not only are we protecting the vote, we're concerned about money in politics. We're concerned about reapportionment. We are concerned about getting access and getting information, as well as controlling the lobbying process, worried about the fact that ethics laws around the state are being, the nation and state are being weakened. So it's a wide variety of issues, and vigilance, paying attention, having an active group, working with other groups. So for example, the League nationally and at different levels has worked with a variety of groups. We've worked with your Panhellenic Council for the African American sororities and fraternities. Here in Montgomery, we had a forum for the mayor's candidates. We also had a forum for the city council this last summer, working with the Panhellenic Council. In some activities at the national level and the state level, the NAACP and the League work together. A wide variety of groups form coalitions because they believe the same thing, and that first and foremost, active participation is the essence of democracy. And if you threaten active participation by the voters, democracy is in danger.
Wow, so democracy is in danger, and so with the League right now, are you looking at areas where we can get together and form some type of coalition to make that, or are we doing this as just an independent agency of the League, or are we forming coalitions now to fight some of these transparency issues, the lobbying leads? How are we making the work actually happen?
The League does both.
Okay.
It acts on its own, and then it tries to work with partners.
Okay, good.
For example, right now, the state of the Alabama State League is involved in a lawsuit as a plaintiff, and among the other plaintiffs in the lawsuit are the League of Women Voters of the U.S., the League of Women Voters of Georgia, the League of Women Voters of Kansas, the NAACP of Georgia, as well as another voting rights group in Georgia.
And tell us a little bit more about this
lawsuit.
The
Election Assistance Commission's director allowed, through a letter, Alabama, Georgia, and one other state to put citizenship evidence requirements on the federal voter form. We are basically questioning that, believing it's an illegal act by a director, not the commission. So we are in federal court right now in Washington, D.C., awaiting the formal trial on that.
But why would you think that citizenship would be an illegal act when one of the requirements for voting, I think, is to be a citizen?
Yes, but the HAVA, the Help America Vote Act, was passed by Congress. Congress, in that act, said that when you and I sign our federal form applying for voter registration, we are attesting to our citizenship. And in the past, the commission had ruled that you can't change that. Now, this was changed by the action of the director, not the commission.
Okay.
So we believe that the procedures were wrong. And you have to speak up when you believe procedures are wrong. One of the things that I know from having done a lot of research in Alabama politics and co-author of 2 books on it, including one on Big Jim Folsom, our colorful governor, but a very much rights-oriented governor, is that for a long time people in this state were told that if you're not the right people, and that meant if you're poor, whether you're white or black, and if you are minority, you should let other people make the political decisions. And, you know, it's been fought, the Voting Rights Act, the Civil Rights Movement here and throughout the nation, but people have to be reminded they have to work themselves. And in a sense, we're seeing that in the elections right now. More people are participating in this presidential set of primaries and caucuses than we've seen in ages. And that's good, but you have to be informed when you participate.
Well, that says a lot about information, and like going back to something you said earlier, that there must be some type of transparency. So what kinds of issues should a person look for to see if their government or this government, whether it's your local city government or your national government, is being transparent? What are some things that you can tell the audience that they can look for in addition to joining the league to find out?
The starting point is to be informed about what's going on.
Okay.
So I would invite the audience to go to the State League webpage, lwval.org. On that webpage, we always have the latest information on voter registration, law changes related to it, how to get more information, how to check your voter registration, and so forth. I'd also suggest that you go to vote411.org and go to the online voter assistance section of vote411.org, and you'll find there for the state of Alabama, for example, we have posted all the candidates who are running in the statewide races. That's the appeals courts, the president of the Public Service Commission, the senators' races, and we've asked them all to answer some questions for us, and we put the question answers up just as the candidates have written them. We also, for November, will be putting on that a pro and con, evenly based set of arguments for each of the amendments to the Constitution. So Vote 411 is a nonpartisan meaning the League does not support any particular party, and it does not support any particular candidates. We try to present unbiased, useful information. So that's a starting point to do it. The other is to pay attention to news.
Yes.
Unfortunately, people aren't able to read newspapers as much because there are fewer in the state.
That's correct.
So one of the other things you can do is go to lwval.org and look at our legislative report. If you go to our legislative report, you're going to see our coverage of many of the issues that are in the legislature. We describe the league positions on these because we do take positions on issues only if the league has thoroughly studied the issue and come to a consensus at the local level. So, for example, when the state league says we're supporting a piece of legislation or opposing it, it's because the local leagues have studied the issue, had meetings where we've developed a consensus of what they believe is the appropriate position, and then that is used as the basis of action.
Well, so for the league, let's go back to looking at some of the races that you have that you have posted about the candidates. For the Court of Appeals, I know a lot of people don't even understand why these judges are running. How important is that race for just the average everyday citizen about the Court of Appeals? Why should I be interested in doing that race or coming out and voting for anybody in that race?
Well, when the Court of Appeals is making decisions, we have first a criminal court and we have a civil court. The criminal court is making most of the key decisions on the death penalty, for example. They are making decisions on whether sentencing procedures were not only appropriately done, but fairly done. So they're deciding some basic rights for people that we know and that we would be caring about. The civil cases are dealing with suits, fairness in how we've been treated in the process of the jury trials or the judge-based trials when we are suing one person or an organization for a wrong. So the appeals court is where most of the cases really stop. And the judges there have a great deal of power.
Wow. And a lot of people won't even come out and vote for them. And a lot of the judges will not come to any candidates forums to discuss their positions on how they feel about some of the issues that we care about the most. So has the league found that as well? If you haven't invited them to any forums, and do they accept that invitation?
At the appeals court, we have not had a forum recently, but let me give you an example of what the Greater Birmingham League did. They discovered that because of generational changes in age, a majority of the judges in Jefferson County were going to be new judges. So they held a forum where they invited all of the candidates for the judgeships in the county so that people could come, listen to them, get a feel for who they were, and then after the meeting talk with them as individuals. And they did that on a federal holiday when all the judges were available. And that was done so that people going to the primaries could have a chance to meet people. They publicized it on Facebook and Twitter, and the State League is on Facebook and Twitter and has links on the web page to other leagues and to other organizations who are doing things to inform the electorate.
Wow, I just 100% agree that people have to get involved in those judge races, even though they're not sexy. It doesn't seem like it really affects your everyday life, but they are deciding every day the basic rights of so many people. And then what we hear on the back end is overcrowding in prison. We hear this group of people were disenfranchised from doing something, but you don't realize that that election is more important, or probably one of the most important elections that we have to look at.
And in the past 2 decades, if you're looking for women holding public office, you'll find it in the court system.
Exactly.
And often, I know going to women's meetings that very early on, a lot of change occurred because women got mad, and attorneys said, hey, things aren't right, and women started running, and they started changing the way that, for example, family law courts operated. So much is affected by the courts.
So women have made a lot of progress, and I know that's part of some of the younger generation will say that they do not believe in like the NAACP or the league because that time has passed on. So I just want to know, have women made so many great accomplishments that that the league may be still necessary for voting, but it's not necessary in my everyday world, like my rights at work or my rights as a citizen in what I do as far as going to the store or being stopped by the cops. Is it really still necessary for that?
I believe it is.
Yes.
I think part of the problem is that every generation, as it ages, stops telling the generation before it about how things were.
Yes.
And that I know my parents grew up in the Depression.
Yes.
They didn't talk about the very hard times they had.
Yes.
We found that when I was teaching, because I used to teach at AUM, when years ago the miniseries on Martin Luther King aired, the students, the freshmen, both white and African American, were asking us questions about the civil rights movement. They didn't know anything about it. They didn't know the role that had happened here in Montgomery. You know, many of the African American organizations and some of the churches are beginning to reteach what it was like so you can understand what you're protecting.
Yes.
Same thing with the women's movement.
Yes.
There are a lot of people that didn't know that many of the law schools, many of the graduate schools discriminated against women.
Yes.
They used to calculate their unbiased rules for how you could get in and then subtract points if you were a woman.
Wow.
Many of them, people out there don't know that in some of the best schools in the country, if you were 30 years of age, you couldn't get in. If you were a woman who had children, they didn't want you. So there are still a lot of issues, including pay disparities for equal work, that aren't settled. But you have to know your history to be able to move forward. And if the history's forgotten, it's forgotten because one generation doesn't talk to the other.
Yes. Well, Anne, you have given us so much information, and we thank you so much for informing us of these pressing issues still of today. We will be right back with Making It Great. Welcome back to Making It Great. I'm your hostess, Melissa McNeil-Hammonds, and I just want to tell you things today. It weighs heavy on my heart when I look out across the United States, and especially here in Alabama, where we have such a depravity. We see a legislator or a senator, and then we say, wow, we have women who've done great things. But then when you look deeper, you see that there are only 9 women who are in the whole Senate of 50 people. That inside of the state legislature, there are only about 6 or 7 of them, and they have no power positions. They're not on any committee or lead any committee. And you say, well, why should I care about that, Miss Melissa? Why is that even a point today? Because people are so aware of things that I know that they're addressing women's issues. But when your voice, when a woman's voice, a young person's voice, if that's missing from the decision making, then it's missing from the solution. And we have to live with that. So as women, we have to stand up. We have to fight and get what's ours, because our foremothers did the same thing. That's why we're here today. That's why you see teachers in the classroom. That's why, as women, we have to keep moving forward. We have to keep fighting that fight. And this show touches my heart because, as a woman, I realize I stand on the shoulders of many, but I have to make room for others to stand on my shoulders too. Thank you, and thank you for watching Making It Great.